Hi, I'm Britt.
And my name is Alyssa.
And this is SkeleTales.
And this is the podcast where we strive to answer the age-old question of, is my dead grandma watching me?
We do. We also share true tales of the strange, unusual, and paranormal.
Heck yeah, we do. So what are we up to today, Britt?
Oh, I'm in my wingback chair. I have my coffee in hand. We are sitting down with Nickolas Ely from Liberation Hypnosis. Nick is a man of many talents. He is a hypnotist, a reverend, a sorcerer, a medium, and personal trainer. And we are so honored to have him here. Welcome, Nick.
Hey, welcome.
Hey, ladies. How's it going today?
Great.
Good.
Excellent.
Are you sure you're not like a podcaster too with that voice? Come on.
I have a 4-episode podcast,
Okay.
Mind Magic Mayhem, which I interview other occultists and such. But I was telling Britt earlier, I greatly underestimated the amount of work that goes into it.
Yes.
And just don't have the time to keep it going right now.
We feel that, but we have this accountability that we keep each other on it. But yes, you have a voice that's suited.
Velvety, smooth, delicious. So Nick, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm 46 years old. I'm a Leo. I enjoy long walks on the beach, a good whiskey. But since I was a kid, I was a medium, I guess is what you would call it. I would tell my mom about the people standing in my room, and it got to the point to where she didn't want to hear any of it anymore. I've lived in multiple haunted houses, and it was just kind of one of those normal things. And I kind of blame my parents a little bit because they got me into watching scary movies. So for the longest time, little Nick, he was terrified of everything until he finally grew up. And I found myself on that path when I was 14 and found that apparently I have the ability to channel. And I found this out the hard way because a very hostile spirit found that out before I did and tried to come in and cause some trouble. But we can cover that more when we get to the story portion, I guess.
Now, I've never met a sorcerer before. How does one actually become a sorcerer? I'm so intrigued.
Right. So sorcerer is just another word for basically someone who speaks or deals with spirits and magical powers. Right.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
But the anthropological difference that I try and emphasize is that sorcerer is a title reserved for people who do on occasion use or know what other people would call black magic. Now, to be clear, I don't use black magic most of the time, but I say as a siren goes by outside my house. But I did have to learn a number of things in order to learn how to undo them. Because a number of people over the course of my life, starting when I was younger, would start encountering weird things or nasty people. And they would not have anyone to turn to. So that was why I had to learn it.
Oh, so undoing other sorcerers' black magic.
Yes.
Could you tell us an example, a story of when you used your sorcerer abilities?
I'll tell you the first time I tried to begin the process and I got a gentle warning, I like to put it. So I was 18. Yeah. No, I might have been 19. This was just before I entered the Air Force. So I was around 18, 19. And I lived in Monterey, California. And two of my friends, these young ladies, Kim and Yulia, called me up and they're out of sorts. They're a little freaked out. And they were saying they met this really weird dude and they were kind of scared. And right off the bat, I'm like, okay, this is not good. These two girls are like 15 and 16. So I zip on over to their house. I was friends with Kim's older sister and I had kind of adopted these two as little sisters, which I have a big brother streak a mile wide to this day. So that was that. I just went over. And they're telling me the story about this guy that they met after they had walked out of Monterey Graveyard over a bridge towards downtown. Now, right off the bat, bridges are inherently magical. Graveyards are inherently magical. A bridge on the edge of a graveyard, you can do some serious stuff there. So this dude just shows up out of nowhere. They said it was weird because he startled them because he just was there. They didn't see him walk up or anything. And he was just rambling, following them, talking with them for a while because they were scared to tell him to, go kick rocks. And at one point, he seemed to be like a crazy homeless man, which are all over the Bay Area, of course, because of temperate weather. But he kind of did the devil horns and pretended to throw a hex at them. Now, the thing is, Yulia, she had a very powerful healing ability. She could literally put her hand on your shoulder, your back, or whatever, and you could literally feel the buzz of energy move through you. She's very gifted. Wow. When he did that, she felt something kind of, smack into her, basically. So he wandered off shortly after that, and they were both a little freaked out. And the thing is, when they were discussing it with each other later, one of the girls, I can't remember which one, I think it was Kim, said, yeah, he was weird that he was as tall as he was. And Yulia looked at her kind of weird. And she's like, that dude was 5'10" tops. And then they were like, no. And then they started comparing and they were seeing different people.
Whoa.
So they're telling me all this, right? We ended up going to Denny's like you do when you're a teenager. You're hungry. And I didn't have anything to write with, so I took these napkins and I was writing down ideas on what it was. Is this an elemental spirit? Probably not. It's very coherent. Demon? Well, maybe. One of the, kind of just one of those random fey-ish spirits. Sure. Never really actually figured it out, but I had this like 3 or 4 ideas written down on these fucking napkins, teenagers, right? So the next day I put them in my pocket. I go down to the bridge on the edge of the Monterey graveyard. Looking around. Nothing happens. But I get that feeling of somebody staring at me. But that continues throughout the day. I go to work where I'm working at a medical clinic destroying medical documents, right? So I'm in this big warehouse room all by myself. I have to shred something like 10,000 documents using a single page shredder. It's not the most efficient system.
Oh my God.
But the entire day, it's this dimly lit warehouse. Piles of boxes of medical records, and out of the corner of my left eye, I keep seeing someone standing there in the distance. And I jerk my head and look, and no one there. And every time I get a break, I'm kind of looking at the napkins and thinking about it. And that form keeps getting closer and closer. And I'm like, okay, I'm just freaking myself out here. And I actually turn around and I kind of walk through the warehouse. I'm looking behind piles where I'm like, maybe someone's playing a joke on me. Nobody there. So I'm kind of at this point, like talking to it, which, now at this point in time in my life, I know how to have that conversation, but I didn't as a kid. As a, how 19-year-old teenage boys are, I puffed up and tried to act tough and, talk some smack and then just went back to work. And right after I did that, I saw that form standing literally within arm's reach to my left. So I shot up out of my chair and jumped back, and of course there's no one there. And right at that moment, my mom opened the door because she was actually the manager of that clinic. She throws the door open because it's this old door and it sticks. So I jump up because I see this spectral figure to my left. Then my mom basically kicks the door open, practically wet myself. And she just wanted to go to lunch. And I'm like standing there, pale, terrified. She's like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go to the bathroom and then we'll go. And I ran in the bathroom, threw some water on my face, freaked out. And I put my hand in my pockets looking for the napkins. They're not there. I searched all my pockets. I literally went so far as to make sure the door was locked, and I took my pants off and shook them. Change everywhere, but no napkins. So I'm freaked out. Rest of the day, I still feel those eyes on the back of my neck. I go back into the warehouse room. They're nowhere near the chair. Time goes by. Later in the day, I'm hanging out with my friend John. I tell him this whole story because John was into weird stuff at that time too. And we ended up just watching this ridiculous movie, Mystery Science Theater 3000. Right?
Oh, love it. Yeah. Love it.
And there's this one scene where they make fun of where the lead character in the show is watching his friends get sacrificed to the spider god, all that, blah, blah. It's a great episode. But the character says, no, like really badly. He's watching his friends getting sacrificed. No, terrible line delivery. So John's brother, also named Nick, and that was our joke for the rest of the night. I want to get out of the headspace I'm in, so I'm looking for funny stuff. So we're just laughing our heads off. And Nick at one point in time joined in because John and I were finding weirder and more stupid ways to say no to kind of feed into the joke. And Nick went silent movie. He wrote in oh. So he was just holding out no. Laughed our asses off, right? I go home. I have to walk home. It's only a few blocks, but it's dark as fuck. And I'm trying real hard to be like, nope, no one following me. No one following me. No one following me. And I go home and pass out, get up, go to work the next day. Nothing weird happens. Come back home. I only worked half a shift, and there's something like 10, maybe 12 messages from John on my voicemail. This was before cell phones. And he's just panicked, and he won't say what's up on the cell phone, or excuse me, on the voicemail. And the last message is just, hey, come down, meet me at the high school. What the fuck? He's graduating high school. He's in the senior year. I go down there. I'm like, dude, what is your problem? And I just walk up to him. That's the first thing I say. Not, hey, how's it going? Like, hey, buddy. No, just, hey, what's your problem? And he goes, hey, so remember the story you told me? And he goes, yeah. And he hands me the napkins. And he says, that was on my dresser this morning. This was on top of it. And he hands me Nick's little note that said, no.
Goosebumps.
Yeah,
oh my God.
I looked at that and I was like, what? No, you know that noise you make when you can't really, you have 10 thoughts, but none of them want to come fully out of the door. And it all kind of jumbled. That meant that not only did whoever this was actually come up and pick my pocket, but then followed me around all day long, was probably following me when I was talking with Kim and Yulia, watched me fuck around with my friends, and then decided the best way to leave me a warning shot was that way. So at that point I was like, nope, this is out of my league and I'm not going to get involved in this. Kim and Yulia were never bothered by it again. And I never actually figured out who or what that was.
Wow.
So that was the first time that I actually tried like a little sorceresque paranormal investigation. I was planning I'm like, okay, maybe I could do the whole typical try and sage or mugwort or something like that. But where do I do this? And it was just like, no, do not mess with me.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't even try.
Cool. I will leave you alone.
Wow. Was there any legend or lore associated with that bridge or graveyard? Like looking back, or
Monterey is thick with ghost stories, and I'm sure the city of Monterey wouldn't really want me to talk, but I'm in Texas, so I can say what I want.
Yeah, I mean, what are they going to do? Come at us, Monterey.
Monterey's thick with a lot of old legends and lore, and if you know the right places to wander at the right night, you can definitely see some weird crap up there, ranging from ghost stories to cryptids.
Ooh, I want to go now. I want to go see this guy, and I wonder how he would appear to me, and how he would appear to Britt if we did see him. Like, I love that.
You want to go encounter that? No.
You know, I talk a big game. You know this. Mm-hmm. And then when it comes down to brass tacks, it's not happening. But I just am curious, like, how it would present himself to me versus Britt. Like, that alone is very, like, Loki-ish. It's very mischievous or evil, you know? Like, I think that's fascinating. So how did you end up getting into hypnotherapy?
I picked up a book when I was 14. I used to read a lot of paranormal research, right? Old, like, David Cohen books and stuff like that. Very old school books. And one of them started to talk about hypnosis as a supposedly reliable way to help people recall mysterious events. I was like, that's interesting. So I went and I found some books on hypnosis, and I was just blown away. And then I had some very gullible and trusting friends. So I started practicing at the age of 14, and I do not recommend any young person have that level of charisma or influence or power over other people. It's wildly corrupting. Not to say anything weird happened beyond regular hypnosis stuff, but in today's world, I think we probably want to not start doing that at 14. But thankfully, I had friends who were very trusting and did some really cool hypnotic stuff. And I just kept going after that. Did the entertainment thing for a while and decided to help people more with therapy.
Do you do the past life?
Mm-hmm. I do past life regression. Yeah. In fact, I had a client recently who was doing past life regression. And in part of that metaphorical process, they're stepping deeper and deeper inside. And they're, you get more relaxed, but then your mind becomes more awake. And you go through various stages. And at one of these stages, right before you enter a past life, there's a door. And every time this woman put her hand on the door and stepped through, she would just see blackness or gray, nothing. Now, this happens sometimes. So generally, I'll have the client step back and then move on to another door. Now, this most recent client I was working with, and of course, I'm not going to name any names, but this is a wonderful example of what can happen. This has only happened about 5 times. As she's sitting there talking to me, and she's at the door, because past life regression is one of those times where people can talk to you in trance. A thing will happen where you can look at somebody and their face will start to look different. Because like all the musculature in your face just relaxes and the facial tone changes. That always happens. That's one of the things we look for in hypnosis. But her face changed. Like there was a different person sitting there, like a mask of somebody else starts to overlay her face. Now, if I were just a hypnotist, that might have freaked me a bit out, but I was looking at it and I was like, okay, there's someone else here. And right when that was happening, she actually, in her mind, she reaches out to open that door and she heard a voice tell her, you're not ready for this yet. And that happened at the same time that this spirit is overlaying its visage on her face. And I was like, okay, I'll just gently pull her back at that point. And it's always the most difficult thing to explain to clients. I mean, past life regression, if you come in for that, you're open to the reality of, the supernatural and such. But I'm trying to say, yes, no, there was a spirit here and it was putting itself over your face. That's a big ask. And not everyone understands that. But past life regression is a very powerful therapeutic tool. And I used to believe it was just metaphor. I used to think it was just the brain creating something to represent your current struggles and moving through. Mm-hmm. And there have been a few interesting events like the ghost face that actually convinced me otherwise. So, yeah.
Do you think that was some kind of spirit guide or guardian for that person?
Ancestor spirit was the distinct message that I got through. It was somebody on her maternal side.
Laura, friend of the podcast, Lenore, also hypnotist, was the one who told me about past life regression. And she does it as well and says it's a great tool because sometimes through previous lifetimes, you end up with holding on to that trauma and how going back can sometimes help heal the past to work for a better future for yourself.
Yeah. And past life regression, I think, is one of the most fascinating things that I do. I mean, my bread and butter is weight loss and stop smoking, of course, which I love doing because it saves lives. But past life regression is one of those things that really tells us more about who we are. Because science, degree in psychology and all that jazz, we think that we're just this giant pound of jelly in between our ears. But the reality of it is, we are so much more than that. And when the meat suit dies, whatever part of us moves on, the thing that some people call soul, spirit, kaba, whatever, that part of it that moves on still holds on to some of the shit that happened to previous meat suits. I curse a lot. I hope that's okay.
Oh my gosh. No, you're absolutely fine.
But yeah, the parts of us that move on are not the parts of us that call ourselves Nick or Britt or Alyssa, right? So that's a lot of Jungian psychology. Those are personas. They're masks that our deeper selves wear to interact in the universe. That often ends up being what haunts. And that's kind of a weird thought, right? That your soul isn't your mind, but it's not. But the soul or spirit or whatever will hold on to some of those things.
Oh, that's interesting.
So the bifurcated soul theory is kind of a really fascinating thing to look at. There's this division between who you think you are and what you actually are. But the conscious-unconscious interchange in hypnosis is a great way to explore that. Actually, I'll tell you another weird story. Actually, this one was one that happened, if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
Always.
So I'm doing past life regressions, and I did 2 in a week once, and they were both kids. Now, my rule with kids is I don't work with them unless the parent brings me evidence that backs up what the kid said. So if, little Susie is saying, hey, I was Cleopatra. No, I'm not going to take your money. I'm not going to feed into this. This could damage your child too. You could end up making the child delusional. But if the kid says my name was Britt Kilpatrick in 1993 and I lived at 123 Main Street, and then, there you go. Somebody looks up there as a Britt Kilpatrick at 123 Main Street. Okay, we can look. And I had 2 of those cases in 1 week, which never happened before and has not happened since. So I'm walking this kid through the process, and, you know, kids are great. They're just wonderful imaginations, and all the goofy stuff that can happen in these. I know if they start talking about, you know, their dog flying an airplane or whatever, I'm kind of like, okay, let's get back to more real stuff. Adults, not as easy. But this kid's having a great time. They're going back. They're smiling. They're feeling all the emotions. And then very suddenly, this young lady goes very blank face, just like out of nowhere. And I was like, that's weird. And her voice drops a little bit. I mean, she doesn't sound like me, but her voice drops and she says, remember Marigold? And I'm like, what? And then look at the parent, and the parent's like, I don't know. And then her voice comes back, face tonality keeps going. I'm like, that was weird. But occasionally junk data comes through. The brain gets distracted. And I'm like, okay, write that down in the notes. And the parent even asked, what was that fine Marigold? And I was like, oh, you know, it's hard to say. Sometimes the information comes through. That could have been even a different past life information coming through. Keep an eye out for things named Marigold, just in case. Week goes by. At the end of the week, I'm seeing this young boy. And he had been dealing with some night terrors that was potentially linked to some past life stuff. So put him in trance, helped him deal with the terror, right? So I'm feeling good about myself. The kid's happy. He's still in trance. And his face goes, he just drops down, lack of tone. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. And the kid says, remember Marigold. And I'm like, okay. And I'm trying hard to keep my poker face on, because if this kid's parent sees me freak out, I'm like,
or go, gasp, just like we both did.
Yeah. And, you know, just I'm like, okay. And I finish the session. Kid comes up, and the parent's like, what's this Marigold thing? I'm like, oh, you know, junk data sometimes comes through. Like, please don't see it on my face, like the surprise. Because I've done this forever, but even, you know, now, like, stuff happens to weird me out.
Yeah.
So I'm driving home that night, and I have to take a detour because of traffic. And lo and behold, I pass a Marigold exit. And I'm like, no fucking way. And I turn off on a Marigold exit. And it's one of the, you know, like highway exits that nobody really uses.
Yeah.
And it's one of these. And there's no other cars there. And I come down, and there was a car that had gone off the embankment and smacked, like, engine first into a tree. And engine's still ticking. It's hot. There's smoke coming out, or steam, one of the two. I pulled over and jumped out, ran over, and, you know, I was like, yeah, I hope I remember my CPR training. And there was a young lady in there, and she just cracked her head on the front dash, and she was barely conscious. I called 911. They picked her up, took her care of her, and all that. But it was just one of those moments where, for those of us who do try and deal with the supernatural or the hidden aspect, the occult of the world, occasionally these little brushes just happen. I have no idea if there's anything important about that girl that, you know, required some goofball like myself to actually go and see that and participate. God. That type of stuff is just one of those, you know, gentle caresses the universe likes to give you every so often to say, hey,
that is crazy. That's awesome.
All connected. Holy shit. That's crazy.
That is. I had a similar thing just like that when I was in high school. I went to the Jersey Shore with one of my friends. We were on the beach one night. We saw a star. We're like, what star is that? And we are like, Neptune. It probably wasn't, but and then Neptune was like this running joke throughout the weekend, pretty much. We were like, joke everything. We like named a bowl that we had Neptune. Like we were like,
were you on the beach Neptune. When you saw the star?
We were on the beach. Okay, yes. And so then we are driving back home, and literally, I think I was like 17 or 18. So it was like my first road trip alone, and driving home. And all of a sudden my car starts banging, makes this huge banging noise. Bang, bam, 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 bam. And it was raining, and like we had to pull over. I pulled over to some first exit gas station. You know, I called my dad. I was like, the car is like making terrible noises. I don't think we should drive anymore. I don't know what to do. And he's like, well, where are you? And I tell my friend, I'm like, go ask them where we are. Cause you know, so he can send AAA or whatever. And she comes back and she's like, you're not going to believe this. We're in Neptune, New Jersey. And we're like, what? And then after I got off the phone with my dad, I had to try to drive somewhere else. And then the car drove perfectly fine after that. So I'm like, did we avoid an accident? Like, was that
who knows?
You invoke the god Neptune.
God
maybe. Of the sea. You're at the beach. You spoke his name. You kept speaking his name in that context. You got his attention.
Interesting. And then it was torrentially downpouring when this happened too.
Also god of storms.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Crazy.
There you go.
Maybe now I've got goosebumps, but wild. Okay.
All right. You teased us earlier when you were talking about the haunted houses you grew up in.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Could you tell us some stories?
Yeah, totally.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm too young to remember most of this. The first haunted house I can remember my mom told me about was in Missouri. And the house was near this huge valley. So when storms rolled through in the Midwest, as they do, the thunder would just shake the house. And my dad, he was not a good man. He would be out all night partying, philandering, doing all that. So he'd be out. And I was one-ish, because maybe two, but my sister was still in the crib. She's just about a year younger than me. And my mom heard crying, a baby crying in Amanda's room, my sister. And she goes into the room to look at her, check on her, and looks down, and she's hearing this baby crying from the crib, and my sister is asleep.
Whoa.
Now, my dad was a bad attempt at a Christian preacher at that point, so mom was superstitious. So she just gently picked Amanda up and then very quietly, left the room, still hearing the crying. And this happens a couple of times, especially during storms when the house would shake. Dad didn't believe her, of course. And then one night he happens to be home and there's a storm and there's crying in the other room. My dad, says, Barbara, can you go check on the baby? And my mom looks down at her arms where she's holding Amanda and looks back at him and says, sure. And apparently that, made my dad's eyes go big. That was really kind of one of the first early encounters. I was very young, so I only remember vague senses of unease. Probably the very first that I can clearly remember, I think it was about 8, maybe 9. It was in San Antonio, and we were living in this apartment, and this apartment had overhangs for cars, and these overhangs, you could rent out a closet. And I remember just playing around by myself, and I had this very strange compulsion to open one of the closets. I mean, it's just a storage unit, nothing special about it. But it was one of those compulsions that felt odd. And at that point, I remember saying to myself, I don't want to open that. But I remember standing up and going to open it, despite the fact of not wanting to open it. And I opened it. And a wind, actually not like a wind, but air moved out like a wind and simply brushed past me. And then I just heard the words, thank you. And I was like, I'm a kid, right? This makes no sense to me. Now, as an adult, I'm looking back. I clearly remember everything. I clearly remember walking away like a little afraid and then looking back and thinking that I saw something looking around the corner at me.
Oh.
I was just like, looking back as an adult now, that doesn't make any sense because to my knowledge, most storage units don't have the ability to trap spirits, but what the hell, maybe.
Like looking back at the baby crying in that first house in Missouri, like now that you have the adult perspective and more experience, what do you think the deal with that was? Like, was that a little baby ghost or?
Yeah, we had found out that a child had died of pneumonia in that room.
And you guys were hearing it every time it cried?
Yeah.
Because it was like stormy and that's how you catch pneumonia.
It's one of the things that I find most disturbing in some of my work is a child spirit. Because it's just kind of like, God, you didn't deserve this. And I'm so sorry whatever happened.
Comfort that baby.
Yeah. It's tragic, but in most cases, very young children do not have a consciousness that is very well developed enough to stick around. So those are more like residue hauntings.
Okay.
Right. Those are more usually echoes, unless it starts interacting with you, which is a totally different story.
Okay.
And you want to watch out for baby ghosts who interact. That's unlikely. That's more likely something else.
Very obviously, like the first crying, I'd been running out of there, but baby ghosts that interact. So,
quote of a day: you're gonna want to watch out for baby
Never talk
ghosts
to the
that
baby
interact.
ghost.
Yes,
no, I wouldn't. I don't think that would be a problem for me. I'm good. Not a risk. All right, sorry. So carry on.
Let's see. The first time I found out I was a channel, right?
Yes.
And I don't channel much. I have a very specific ritual I do when I channel. And the reason why is the first time because, and I have talked to other mediums and such, and this will happen. If you don't know that you have that ability, you're kind of like a glove. And if you are not careful, something can come up and try and put his hand in the glove. That sounded a lot more vulgar than I meant for it to.
I picture the picture my mental image of that.
So my friend in Amarillo, Matt, very good guy, and I'm still friends with him on Facebook. It's one of those friendships that has lasted for quite some time. He told me once something weird was going on in his house, that his pets would act weird, but he knew that I had been doing a lot of paranormal readings and research. And he goes, okay, I got one for you. I'm laying on my bed the other night and I have my window open. And his little brother, his name I believe is Jake, is in a different part of the house, but both of their windows face the same direction to the backyard. And he hears a scream from outside. That sounds like his brother Jake. His brother Jake had nightmares. He was young. So Matt was like, okay, I'm going to go check on him. And he gets up and he walks across the room. Now, his room had hardwood floors. And he says that he put his hand on the door, he's going to open the door, and he hears footsteps behind him. And he turned around, and of course, there's nobody there. But he hears these footsteps walk across the room to his closet, and the closet door closes. And he tells me this story while I'm hanging out in this home. And I'm like, no way. Let's go find out. Like a genius kid, right?
Yes.
So I've read these books. I know what to do. Not at all. And we're in, and I'm looking, I'm doing the normal stuff. I'm, just kind of feeling for weird cold spots on the wall, not even acknowledging that it's, that can be just a temperature thing. I have zero tech. I have no idea what I'm doing at all. But I had just learned hypnosis. This was where I fucked up. I'm like, okay, let's walk through this again, Matt. And I'm going to count from 10, and I want you to relax with each number. What I did not know then that I knew now was that he had something attached to him. He had been dealing with depression. He'd been dealing with a lot of stuff, and that is a very common side effect of having an attachment. So put him in a very light hypnotic trance, and he starts telling the story. He's like, I'm laying on my bed, I'm reading my book. And the moment he reached trance state, and it's me, him, and his cousin Owen, who happened to be hanging out as well. The moment he reached true trance, the air felt really thick. Now, when you've done like your paranormal researchers, have you ever actually had the opportunity to put your hand into a spirit's place? Have you put your fist in a ghost? Is what I'm asking.
No,
okay.
Not that I'm aware of.
It is an unusual feeling to actually physically encounter a spirit. The air will feel charged. It will feel thick. And it will sometimes mess with your perceptions. So the air starts getting thicker. And I'm like, what the hell is going on here? And Matt just keeps talking. And the room starts to look darker somehow. Now I know now that what that means is my pupils were dilating in response to an unusual state of consciousness, but the room starts to get darker, and I'm like, no, this is bullshit. This can't be right. I'm freaking myself out. And Matt just keeps talking. And as soon as he gets to a certain point in the story, the air got so thick and heavy, I started to turn to look at Owen, and I was going to ask him, like, dude, do you feel weird? And I look at Owen, and Owen, he was a white boy, but he's even whiter now. I mean, this dude's white as a sheet. And he looks at me, and there's literally sweat running down the side of his head. And he goes, dude, do you feel that? And as soon as he felt that, I became aware of this feeling in the center of my chest, and it almost felt like a bubble, right? Like a little bubble of air. I didn't need to burp or anything, but this bubble is sending out these little like waves of sensation of unusual energies throughout my body. And I turned and I looked to him, and the moment that he said that, that bubble kind of popped, and I couldn't move. It literally just felt like every muscle in my body just locked up tight. And I was like, what the fuck? And I'm looking at Owen, and Owen goes rigid, and his chest comes up, and he looks like he feels like somebody's got him by the neck. He told me later it's what he felt. And we're both like, what the hell? And my head starts to turn on its own to the wall, and I see this silhouette standing there with, it looked like more or less a humanoid form with a rather malformed head. And the thought goes through my mind, and it was kind of like, it wasn't words, it was like an understanding, and it almost felt like type print come out, just like, you're not alone. Now, when something comes in and tries to step into your body, if you don't have ritual defenses, you're in some deep shit, like right off the bat. That's how possessions start, right? I was very fortunate. I do not know what guardian spirit came through. I don't know what god, goddess, or whoever was looking out for me. But it popped into my mind on a quick energetic technique to use. One that I did not know, period. But it is a form of shielding, like if you know any, like Magic 101 shielding. And essentially I did a shielding technique, and that broke whatever connection was there, and I could feel this thing trying to crawl inside. So it is a grotesque sensation. But whenever it was that I did, actually gave me just enough breathing room that I could move, and my body just kind of sagged. And I reached over, and thankfully the door was open because I grabbed Matt, who is still talking. He has his eyes closed. He's not aware of anything until I grabbed him by the front of the shirt. And I was always the largest of my friends by a country mile. And I just whipped him towards the door, just threw him out in the hallway, and then turned and grabbed Owen. And as soon as I touched Owen, I felt this shocking sensation of, basically almost like touching a live wire. And I dragged him out of the room, slammed the door. Of course, I know now doors usually don't stop things at all. Well, we're out in the hallway, and Matt is pissed until he sees like the looks of terror, because he thinks I'm pranking him, right? He just started talking, and I just throw him across the room. But he sees the look of terror on my face and on Owen's face. And he's like, what the fuck happened? And I could feel this thing trying to like come down the hallway. And it feels almost like, the barometric change when a storm comes in.
Yeah.
Very similar sensation. And this thing followed us throughout his house. We ended up having to go outside, like across the street, to get enough distance where we could talk about what was happening without both myself and Owen kind of feeling this thing trying to come back. It had found a meal. I mean, it's a parasite. A lot of these things, I call them feeders. They will nest in someone's life. And they'll try and take off little bits and pieces of energy. It had been doing that with Matt. And when I had put Matt in trance, without even knowing it, knowing now, I was threatening its food source. So it decided it wanted to either scare me off or see if it could, get an even bigger meal out of myself and Owen as well. So we talked about it for a bit, and Matt's terrified. And of course, because he has to sleep in that room, right?
Yeah, right.
And he's like, do you want to stay over? And I was like, no, I do not.
Hell no.
Sorry. But that was how I found out I'm a channel.
Did he ever get rid of that spirit?
Yeah.
Not to my knowledge. He moved out. He was a kid. He lives in he has his own family. He's very happy now. He's got a productive business and has his own life. He's recovered from that type of influence. Whatever it was nasty.
Yeah.
It wasn't friendly, and it had some things I wanted to say, but I'm not there to listen all the time.
Well, especially at that age when you're just learning these abilities.
No. I am thankful for the lesson, though.
Are there any other stories that you're drawn to sharing? We might have you on the podcast again. I'm just going to say it because I think that we've only just got the tip of the iceberg here, and that you're just a well full of great stories.
I'd love it. Okay, Monterey, California. Are you familiar with ley lines?
No.
So a ley line, if you look at some old maps, especially old parts of Europe, you'll notice that you can actually draw lines of connection between sacred sites, right?
Oh.
Now, oftentimes, it's said these lines carry a lot of natural, magical energy, spiritual energy. There's a place in Monterey where one of these at least used to boil up very close to the surface, to the point to where you could feel the difference between when you stepped onto it and when you stepped off. Now, concurrently, there's a lot of spiritual activity out there. Now, it's moderately embarrassing, but when I was younger, I was a bit of a goth.
That's the crowd I ran with. I'm with you.
My people. Okay. So myself and a friend of mine who was uber goth, half-shaved head, punk rock, look 24/7, pretension all the way. He was all in. He and I went out to a place that used to be called White Mountain. Right. Now, White Mountain is named after the logging company that used to be there. And in order to get there the way that we went, you had to walk on the ley line. So full moon, of course, that's when you do it.
Yes.
Middle of the night, essentially deep woods with a few houses nearby. Now, people that were locals back then, they don't go there. It's one of those places where you're like, probably not. And they don't really bother telling the tourists about it either, because they don't want idiots wandering around in the woods at night, probably getting hurt because they're clumsy. We're wandering around at night, and I get that feeling of being watched. And it's pitch black except for the moon, so we're navigating by moonlight. And it's very much that ambiance, right? Where you know you're surrounded. And I keep seeing movement in the corner of my eyes and stuff. Some of it was definitely animals. Some of it didn't really look good. But I kept hearing this voice in the back of my head telling me, hey, you really aren't supposed to be here right now. Now, because of animals and such, and because of the gothy, I had a big knife on me, right? About the size of a small Bowie knife, because...
Because of animals and because you're goth? Is that the
Well, you
the
never
two
know when a
reasons you
squirrel's going to
escaped?
come running out of the woods, Alyssa. Yeah. No, I had brought it on the silly reason. Again, teenager, thought that there are cryptids up there, and I have seen Sasquatch in that area. So I'm like,
All right,
he'll probably smash me flat, but I would rather have a knife and not need it.
Go down fighting. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, maybe I'll give Bigfoot a boo-boo on the way out. But as we're walking around, I keep hearing that voice louder and louder in my head, and it's switched. It's not saying you're not supposed to be here. It's saying get out. And I keep getting this really weird thing where I'm looking up in the trees and I'm seeing faces. Now, you look at trees and your brain creates patterns, right? And I remember looking up in this one old, I think it was an elm, and I saw a face, and I was like, oh, wow, that's a really lively one. My brain is really crazy. And it leaned out of the fucking just to look at me. And literally just like I'm leaning forward right now. And then slowly drew back. Disappeared into the leaves. And I was like, okay. And I turned around and we just kept going. I have no idea where my friend wanted to go. He was a bit of an aimless nut job at some points. And that voice kept getting louder in the back of my head. Just kept saying, get out, get out, get out, get out. And I suddenly started to get these really ugly images of bloodshed, like of literally just people being, attacked with a knife and stuff like that. And I look down and my hand is on the knife and I'm like, oh, okay, this isn't good. And, I started to do that shielding technique, but that kept happening. So whatever was out there was able to just walk right past my shields. No problem at all. Because there are bigger fish in the sea. And eventually I looked down and she was like, yo, dude, something's not right here. Something is trying to get inside my head and maybe you should hold this knife. And he looks at me and he realizes he's out there with somebody twice his size who's got a knife. He's like, hey, something's telling me to stab you. And he's like, and then I was like, unless you're getting stabbed the Nick vibes. Like he looks at me and we looked at each other and we were like, we should leave. And he's like, yeah, we should fucking go.
Oh my gosh.
So as we turned to leave, there is this cacophonous noise as a small tree behind us simply like falls over. And we were just like, fuck, nope. Just, two goths like hauling ass off out of the woods.
Were you wearing Jinkos? What are those jeans called, Britt?
No, I wasn't wearing my Jankos.
Okay. Because I would.
No, it was all black. We did have the trench coats though. We had our trench coats.
Oh, you gotta have the trench coat. Yeah.
Getting those feet stuck in the way too big clothing.
Yeah,
clothing
absolutely. Yeah.
On the way down.
Those are city wear, not, you don't want forest goths wearing your Jankos.
I heard that you are starting a witch-centric personal training program. I'm a little obsessed. How do I join? What's it involved? Can I be hypnotized to be better at working out?
Yes. Okay. So Witch Fitt, Witch Fitt 2Ts. That's my baby. I've been working on Witch Fitt for about a year now, and I'm launching it on this coming Monday,
October 23rd.
Yeah. So Witch Fitt is an online training program. It has top-notch personal training stuff. I've been a trainer for a long time because I do believe that if we are to treat our souls and spirits correctly, we have to treat our bodies correctly. So Witch Fitt provides the personal training guidance for it. It has a hypnotic routine to go through to keep people, motivated, keep the spirits up. But it also has a full arcana, which is to say a magical training system attached with it as well.
Ooh.
So I start with the ancestor magic. I start with a magical and hypnotic journey. Basically, you sit, you listen, you go. You find a lot of different magical and spiritual resources that you bring back with you. And then we go into energetic systems, and we go into a number of different things that are pretty body specific, but also deal with a number of different things that can come up that have to do with spirit, intention, motivation, how the mind has to integrate behavior, energy, and intention, things like that. So I spent about a year putting it together, finally ready to officially put it out.
Awesome. And that is starting October 23rd. It's Witch Fitt. And is there a website to go to for that?
Witchfitt.com is the domain. It'll take you to Liberation Hypnosis. And I am putting up the official guidance page and all that on Liberation this weekend.
Awesome.
So you'll be able to find out more and make a purchase today.
And you mentioned that you have something launching on November 1st as well.
Yes, I am putting out my witchcraft and hypnosis training program.
Oh, okay.
The name that I'm putting it out under right now is basically magiotherapy, MAGIO therapy. So what this is, it is a full hypnotic training regimen to teach you how to use hypnosis. But I'm also explaining a lot of the magic behind it, specifically focusing on how to use magic to influence yourself and to influence other people. So there's spirit work, there's energy work, a little bit of ancestor work, ritual basics, everything a baby witch might want to explore to get their feet wet in the safest way possible.
If people want to get involved in these programs, if they want to get in touch with you, follow you on social media, where should they go?
Check out liberationhypnosis.com. That is my website. On TikTok, I am Nick the Hypnotist. And I believe that is also my Instagram handle as well.
Britt, do we have one more question here for Nick?
We do. Every SkeleTalk, we ask one final question. What 3 objects would Alyssa and I need to bring to a seance to summon you from the afterlife?
A bottle of good whiskey. That will be number 1. Probably a good story and good company.
Nailed it.
Hello. We are doing that right now, minus the whiskey. It's a little early for me.
Speak for yourself, Britt.
Nick, this has been an incredible experience. You had me on the edge of my seat with your stories.
Thank you so much. Everybody, please go check out Nick's socials, go visit his website, join his programs. I can't wait to hear more about it. I love it.
Me too. Nick, was there anything else that you wanted to talk about tonight before we leave?
There's a lot, but we could talk about it later. I did actually, the one last thing that I did want to say before we take off, was haunt y'all later.
Haunt
you later.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.